Hi everyone, and welcome back to Mission 1820 and this week's episode of Have You Ever Wondered? Now, this is a weekly series where we answer a common biblical question in just 5 minutes or less. So if you're new to the channel, we welcome you, and we definitely encourage you to browse all of the other available content that we have. So without further ado, let's get to this week's question. Have you ever wondered, how do I find God's will for my life? I know this has been a question that we've all asked ourselves at one time or another, and yet unfortunately, it just seems that the more searching we do for the answer, the more lost we actually get. But for starters, God's will for our lives is pretty simple. It's to obey His word and to bring glory to Him in all that we do. This means that in order for us to actually find what God's will is, we need to actually be reading His word. See, Psalm chapter 143 verse 10 tells us, "Teach me to do your will, for you are my God. Your spirit is good. Lead me in the land of uprightness." See, in the Bible, God instructs us in the things that He wants us to do, but He also tells us things that we're not to do. You see, we're told in Matthew chapter 7, verse 24, "Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice, well, he's like a wise man who built his house on the rock." If we're interested in knowing God's will and plan for our life, then we need to learn to walk with God. We need to develop and cultivate a relationship with Him. See, we need to know Him and not just seek to know about Him. You see, the more we trust in God and we hand over our life to Him, well, the more He can start sharing what He has planned for us. Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 through 6 tells us to trust in the Lord your God with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. But in all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will direct your paths. You know, before God will reveal His will to you, you have to be committed to doing and trusting in whatever it is that He wants you to do. Romans chapter 12, verse 2 says, "Do not be conformed to the world, but rather be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God." You know, many times when we say we're seeking God's will, what we're really saying to God is, "Hey, here's what I want to do in my life, so I need you to make this your will for my life." You see, God's really clear about many aspects of His will for our life in His Word. And we can see one example of this, and it's in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 3, where He tells us, "For this is the will of God, your sanctification, that you should abstain from sexual immorality." The problem is that when we're seeking God's will, our search tends to be more self-focused than God-focused. Our prayer life becomes more about asking God to bless our will and plans than for Him to show us His will. God's will is about God. It's not about us. So the next time you ponder what God's will is for your life, I would suggest taking the time to read God's Word. Build a relationship with Him, but most importantly, walk with Him. Because when we actively and obediently serve the Lord, it is then when He will reveal His will for our life. Now you know how to find God's will for your life. So God bless, and thanks for watching.